right, so welcome to episode 4 of the Superflow podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking to Ameet Mehta. Ameet is the founder of FirstPrinciples.io, a venture studio that launches and grows SaaS ventures. We go over what is a venture studio to begin with, how does it actually work, how are they growing their ventures, the adoption of remote working, exit options for SaaS founders, and a lot more. Let's go. Nice to see you, man. Lovely to have you here. And let's get into a quick little podcast here. So, founder of FirstPrinciples.io and Venture Studio is what you're doing. And we want to know all about it. Amit, tell us what's happening in terms of First Principles.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to learning from each other. So yeah, Venture Studio is one of the things that First Principles does, and we have a very clear directive that we have set for ourselves, which is to go ahead and create cash flowing or profitable internet businesses within 36 months that are also growing at 50% year on year. So we kind of take that as kind of our benchmark. Again, we want to build profitable companies in 36 months that are going ahead and growing by 50% year on year. And we use that and go ahead and build SaaS businesses, internet businesses that kind of follow reoccurring businesses. So we even do services businesses that are digital first, that kind of follow that ethos, and the ones that can kind of get us there.
Interesting stuff. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about how do you guys come up with this entire, like, let's say, idea, or, how did the entire concept of a venture studio come about in your head?
Yeah, sure. So what we saw was there are a lot of folks that are there in the industry that are seeing problems and they have a SaaS solution for it, but they themselves don't have the technical expertise or the product marketing expertise or frankly the time to be able to execute on it. So what we do is we basically work with a subject matter expert within a certain space. So hey, you've been working in the insurance industry for the last 20 years and you know exactly how a SaaS solution kind of make things better. Mm-hmm. So we basically, work with different folks that have expertise and kind of see if that idea is going to work out. And the best thing about First Principles is that we have both the team, systems, and processes to validate ideas in a quick manner and see if we are able to roll it out into their own kind of entities.
So, like, in terms of the background of, let's say, did you face a problem that you were trying to build a lot of different businesses, or was it something that you saw happening in the market, and then you're like, okay, you know what, let's sort of try to do this? Because I get the point around, let's say, time and subject matter and all of that. But how did you what is your story coming into this? What's your background coming into this?
Sure. So I think over the last 7 years, we have started a lot of different projects to test out if they're going to work or not work. Some have worked and a lot of them have failed. And in that process, we've basically gone ahead and built a process around sort of validating ideas fast and rolling them out. So people would just ask us saying that, oh, hey, how did you do it? And it's like, hey, would you want to kind of do this together? And honestly, it kind of organically came up. Venture Studio is not something that we were kind of planning to do, I would want to say. We always thought that, so it was something that kind of organically kind of shaped up.
Yeah, and so you were already, you're a dev in terms of background, or you have a business background or something like that?
Yeah, I'm actually not an engineer. I have an accounting and finance background. So I have worked in tech all my life. With that said, I do not have a tech or a design background. I have an accounting and finance background, and I'm decent at marketing and sales, but that's sort of the background that I personally come from.
Nice. And then so that's actually interesting, because I'm sure then you also have a team around you that would be looking at other things. Let's say, since you're talking about tech and in terms of like I'm a lawyer by background in terms of coming into any business. So it's effectively 5 years of nonsense that I studied, and then moving into venture was like, or moving into any kind of business was always like I'm always the outsider. So I can relate to what you're saying. So in terms of the team, like who do you have within the venture studio to sort of, let's say, cover for other areas of your skill set?
Sure. So First Principles has over 75 people now, and we're growing pretty fast. So yeah, I mean, Venture Studio, again, as I was saying earlier, is one of the things that we do. We have a few other businesses that are pretty far along as well. So the great thing is that we're able to leverage those people as well while we're kind of testing out different ideas and all of that. So yeah, I mean, we have a stellar team, and yeah, obviously would not be able to do this by myself by any regard. So yeah, we have a really great kind of product engineering function. So we basically go ahead and group product engineering together. Then we have a strong design function, and then we have a really strong growth function as well. So that kind of rounds out our team. And then when it comes to one of the things that people typically discount is sort of people and culture. And when you're kind of looking to build an organization, that's a really important function as well. So we have a really strong function there. So to be very honest with you, if you had to tell me where I put myself within that ecosystem, people and culture is sort of where I would probably be spending majority of my time. So spending majority of my time either recruiting or sort of communicating what we're doing internally or figuring out what we can do to be better every day. So yeah.
Nice. All right. So, in terms of team, you mentioned actually different functions. So, in terms of you setting up the entire venture studio thing, do you approach it like this? Do you, in your mind, is it something which is like, okay, you don't think of it as one whole? You probably look at it as, okay, let's break it down into different components and then see, okay, there's a product function, there's a growth function, and then you sort of build it out from there. But when it comes to the SaaS venture itself that you would create or you would set up, like for example, you were mentioning something before we started recording about a venture that you guys started within the venture studio, and is it a centralized team that sits at the venture studio level, or is it something at the SaaS level or at the venture level, which is built and then you support it with different things from outside?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So until now, it's been more of a self-organizing team in a sense, where we basically bring together people as ideas sort of come in. So saying that, oh, hey, we need this expert here, or hey, this person has a skill set, and they'll kind of come in. And there's typically a leader for that venture in some sense. There is someone that's kind of leading that. And now that we've had some success with the venture studio model, and very frankly, we have some really great deal flow. And when I say deal flow, we have some really great folks that have amazing ideas that basically kind of need to be validated and kind of execute against. We are going through and kind of formalizing a venture studio team itself. It's important because the venture studio team is very different from a team that might be building or scaling an org. A venture studio team, you're looking for a team that's more made of generalists that are able to solve different types of problems, right? I was on a call with someone yesterday, and they told me there are complex problems and complicated problems. So a complex problem is something where you just don't know what the a complex problem is something where you don't know what needs to sort of happen, whereas a complicated problem is where you kind of need a solution. Anyway, so kind of getting back, we're looking more for, yeah, so you're looking for a team that's more generalists that are able to do more than one thing. And as the business kind of gets stabilized, you're looking for people that are able to execute against one function very strongly.
All right, so like it's a dual structure that you do at this point of time, more than like, let's say, venture studio heavy versus SaaS heavy. So you're like trying to figure out the right balance is what I would probably say in an ongoing ship. Is that what's happening?
As of right now, it's kind of been, hey, let's kind of do this together and things like that. And that has worked out, right? And now that we've proven out that, hey, the venture studio thing can kind of work out, we have our initial systems and processes set up, we're going ahead and rolling out our venture studio, building out a venture studio team itself, and then kind of figuring out, hey, at what point does it make sense to go ahead and roll out this venture into its own separate entity, and how does it become its sort of own its own little baby, right? Everything from financing to team and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of what we like to do. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah, because I've seen this in the market with like lots of people who are individuals who do this quite a bit. They're like so like in a simple manner to understand this. There's a lot of individuals who, especially devs, who end up creating, let's say, multiple, small, let's say, problem solving SaaS ventures, and people call them indie makers, or sort of course indie hackers is something that if you once you go into that community, you'll find like every person is doing like, 2, 3, 4, 5 whatever different kinds of tools that they build. Is this like a more formal version of that for someone who's listening? Like, okay, cool, let's sort of do it a little better than just one individual working on like 4, 5 things, and actually let's sort of give it a bit more structure with the venture studio kind of model.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for us is building businesses that are actually large businesses. So we would only be attacking ideas that can definitely generate more than $1 million in annual recurring revenue in a matter of 24, 36 months. So that would be something from start to sort of. So that's something that we look for. Our goal is not to sort of go ahead and build small little tools and go ahead and kind of create a portfolio. Our goal is to actually build scalable businesses that can scale and that can stand as independent ventures that have their own teams, and potentially that we can continue running, potentially raise money for, or potentially sell as well. So that's sort of what we look for, and that might be different from like an indie hacker perspective. Our goal is to create independent ventures rather than kind of create a coalition or whatever you want to call them of 5 or 6 different apps that may generate a little bit of revenue each.
Got it. Yeah, that makes more sense, because otherwise it sort of gets let's say there's a lot of overlap within the concept itself. But I think the size of the problem or the size of the market that you're going after automatically shifts the way to look at it. Nice. So of course, now if you think about this, I love the model because I was tinkering with this sometime back. You're probably looking at, I think, like 2.5, 3 years back, something like that, probably a little before that. And then, of course, didn't sort of figure how to put all of these things together. But gets us to a point here, Amit, which is if you want to launch all these businesses as a venture studio, or somebody who's sort of tackling these problems, of course you have to be able to iterate fast and sort of move quickly, and you're going after different markets at different times, with different teams, of course. But is there like let's say some sort of a playbook or something that you look at, or something you're developing over a period of time where you feel, okay, once we figure out what market to go after, we'll be able to launch quicker? You think like things like no code is something that's sort of, let's say, helping or moving in that direction of helping you iterate or launch faster?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 questions. One is around process, and second is around tools.
Yes.
So until now, a lot of our processes have been about kind of scaling, kind of products, growth teams, and all of that, because that's sort of what we've been really good at. And now we're formally developing the processes to go ahead and vet out different ideas and going ahead and doing them very quickly. So yeah, we're kind of testing out different processes, what type of team members will kind of work and won't work. And then we're also looking at the thing that you mentioned, which is no code tools. So yeah, definitely no code tools are definitely something that we plan on leveraging, or we are leveraging to test out different sort of ideas in a fast way. So again, from there, we have set a directive that, hey, we want to go ahead and test an idea out within 45 days to 60 days. So, and I know no code tool can definitely help in that. So, and then if you honestly have like a engineering team, one thing that one of the things that people don't talk about is low code tools in a sense. So low code is really great if you don't have like an engineering team. With that said, if you do have an engineering team that, we have like our total team size is 75, but yeah, we have a large enough engineering team. So yeah, we're looking at tools such as Strapi.io. So you can go ahead and check that out. Then there's another thing called Use Gravity. So that's like Node and React kind of SaaS boilerplate template. So we're looking at other tools that are kind of low code tools as well that we can leverage to kind of scale products. The one thing about no code tools is that it's really great to kind of validate ideas. The only thing is that it's really hard to go ahead and scale that using that very specific no code tool. Let's say something does hit, and how do you kind of scale it? So there may be sort of issues when it comes to kind of functionality or being able to scale the database and things like that. And of course, the no-code tools continue to get better over time. So I'm sure over time those solutions will come in. As of now, whenever we look at an idea, we definitely evaluate if we're going to use a low-code tool or a no-code tool to build and test it out.
Nice. And in terms of like, while you're doing all this, of course, there's we spoke about team earlier, and then there's this entire concept of like, I think you were mentioning earlier, of no shore, or like how I probably like to call it, like a global first kind of an approach when it comes to talent pool. So where are your team members based out of? Like, what's happening on that front? Like, do you have like people all around, or what's happening?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question. I think one of the things that COVID has accelerated that we all know is kind of being able to build global teams. So yeah, I mean, primarily initially, majority of our teams were based out of India and the US, and now we're just kind of expanding no matter where our teams are. Actually, very interestingly, we had a couple of people join here in August for a specific role. One person is from Pakistan and the other person is from the Philippines, right? Yeah, so that was the first time that we're hiring in those. Well, we have hired in the Philippines before, but those are the first time that we actually ventured into Pakistan, right? Especially coming from India, we're actually very excited for that. Hey, that we're actually able to kind of build relationships with folks there as well. So yeah, I mean, we're basically looking for talent, and right now, I think probably know that there's an insane kind of war for talent. And yeah, I mean, the best way is to go ahead and find people that are anywhere and everywhere and connect with them. And I think the world continues to become a smaller place. Everybody's watching the same shows. I think Netflix and Amazon has helped a lot with that. So yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing before was that, oh, hey, can someone actually get the job done? I think over in the 2000s and over the first 20 years of the 2000s, like we were able to figure that piece out. Yeah, people can kind of do the job. I think over the last 5 years, I think the cultures have also come in together. No matter where you are, we're literally all watching and kind of part of the same culture. So we're able to share laughs together as well. It's just not about work, and I think that's the biggest change. So I think people don't talk a lot about that, but I think the biggest change now is that it's beyond sort of, hey, my internet can work and my camera can work. It also means that no matter where I'm from, I'm able to connect with that person, laugh with them, empathize with them, and feel like, hey, yeah, this person is someone that I can relate to.
Nice. No, that very important point here, because I think we are seeing that as well. We've got people, not just from one location now. It's become like a very sort of, let's say, geography agnostic kind of an environment overall, where everyone's coming in. Of course, I think there are challenges with that as well, as we with time zones and this and that. But I think overall it's becoming, like you said, much more like a smaller place in that sense, but in a good way overall. Great. And so the entrepreneur in me, or the business mind in me, is thinking of so like the way. So have you considered something like, let's say, acquiring of existing let's say SaaS ventures, or let's say who are already tackling something within that space with some cash flow and some proven traction, and then trying to scale that? Is that something that you've looked at or continue to look at?
Yeah, that's actually something that we do. We're consistently evaluating deals on the PE side of things. And the great thing is that rather than just bringing dollars to the table, what we bring is operator expertise. So our entire pitch is actually get liquidity and get time. So a lot of founders that have been there for a while, yeah, I mean, one, they're looking for growth capital to sort of grow their company. Second, a lot of founders actually want to take some money off of the table. And then the third thing that they really want is actually some peace. I think as entrepreneurs, we're just so focused on kind of responding to messages on a Friday night or on a Sunday morning. So what we do is that, hey, we have systems, processes, and the people that can kind of, kind of come in and play that role. So for example, as companies scale, in terms of support and success is a very key part of it, right? And we have a really great kind of framework to kind of scale those teams. And then also like kind of building out kind of the tech to be able to, for marketing to be able to communicate with sales, for sales to be able to communicate with support and success, building out that ecosystem. We have the experience, the people, and the tools to be able to sort of do that. So yeah, I mean, PE is something that we are actively sort of exploring, looking at deals all over. And the great thing is that we actually have deal flow from all over and some really great deal flow. So right now, a lot of folks are on platforms that you're able to find SaaS companies and things like that. And very frankly, the valuations there are pretty intense, pretty insane right now. So and that's sort of where the market is. So yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate to be able to find deal flow outside of that and find really great businesses, honestly. Everything from Australia to Latvia to the US to India, like it's really great. So yeah.
So so if there's let's say a founder of a SaaS venture right now, okay, let's just say early stage, they've got some traction. Um, how can you help them? Okay, like what I'm sure you can do a bunch of stuff, because I've seen there's a bunch of stuff that you can help them with, but like a few things that you can help them out with, not in terms of advice, but then actually, like if they were to reach out to you, let's say, what is it in your current scheme of things, whether it's the venture studio or a few other things that you're doing, that you can probably help them out with?
Got it. So if you're talking for a SaaS company that has some early traction, then that's a different use case. So I want to say there are three use cases that we go ahead and work with. One is that, hey, I am a subject matter expert who has an idea, and I need someone that can work with me to execute on that idea. Mm-hmm. For that, we have the venture studio. Okay. Then, hey, I am a founder that has some early traction and I have raised some capital. With that said, I don't know how to, or I need help executing both the growth side and the product engineering side. For that, we have our advisory practice. Mm-hmm. We come in and basically say that, hey, how do you go ahead and generate your MQLs in a capital efficient manner, right? If you look at a lot of venture dollars, you might have seen this, I think 43% of all venture dollars go to Google and Facebook. Hey, how do you actually go ahead and actually scale? How do you go ahead and actually build something that's sustainable and something that can scale over a period of time? So that's something that we do. And third is from a life cycle perspective, hey, I've been building this business for the last 7 years. I am going to take off of the table. I'm looking to spend some time with my family. And at the same time, I'm not looking to fully exit my business. A lot of kind of PE deals right now are, hey, full acquisitions. What we say is that, hey, you know what? We're happy for you to actually stay within the business in some capacity, depending on who the entrepreneur is, and scale with you, right? If you look at SaaS businesses, I mean, you see this all the time, like a SaaS business 5 years ago, maybe valued at X, like let's say, a SaaS business is valued at 10 million. And you'll see that same business be valued at 400 or 500 million 5 years later. And because it has grown exponentially. So our entire pitch to the founder is that, hey, you've been doing this for 7 years or whatever it might be. Why don't we come in and give you some liquidity, and more importantly, give you the time back that you need to be able to focus on other things outside of work, and hey, still play the upside. So that's sort of what we kind of do on the PE end. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of three use cases that we have, and those are the three use cases that we kind of play with.
Nice. That's actually that. I want to put this in the beginning of the podcast. So very, very nicely explained. And in terms of like, let's say, other people within the space, are you seeing a lot of venture studios kind of popping up, or is this something that sort of, let's say, it's been around but it's sort of hidden from the mainstream? Is that the main, like, what are you seeing within the space?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, coming from kind of the US and things like that, the venture studio model is something that I would want to say has been around for for the last 7 to 10 years. There's some really great, successful venture studios. And actually what happens is a lot of successful entrepreneurs, after they have gone ahead and had one exit, all entrepreneurs have a lot of ideas. So then they go ahead and studio. So we've actually looked at, and the thing with venture studios though, is that if you look at the success rate, it's actually not very high. So that's something that we've actually looked at very kind of strictly, like in terms of like, hey, how do we ensure that the venture studio will be successful? So from my understanding, there are and have always been sort of venture studios. With that said, there have only been a few that have been successful, right? That have been able to launch ventures in a repeatable manner. Yeah, you might have one-off kind of ventures. There are very few venture studios that have been able to launch businesses in a repeatable manner. And I think that's something that we ourselves are figuring out and figuring out what's going to be the main best mechanism to sort of do that.
So that's interesting because, of course, it quickly brings us to the point of like, okay, what are the kind of difficulties that you face, typically, or like, what are the things that you think about, when you're on a day-to-day level, like the difficulties typically, or like things that sort of, let's say, are being considered as something that you want to solve, as a venture studio. Do you have like some sort of, let's say, points on that?
Yep. So in the venture studio, I think which ideas to kind of test out and which ideas to kill is something, having a framework around that is very critical. So that's one. Two is being able to rapidly test ideas is a second one. Third is having the right team to be able to sort of do that, because a, a venture studio, like, it's very taxing on the team because you're consistently doing something that's new, right? So it's very, very taxing on the team from a mental perspective because there's so much of a context switch and things like that. So I'd want to say being able to have a team that's able to sort of do that. And the fourth one is that for certain things, you do need like experts coming in. So how do you ensure that, hey, we want to, having like a pipeline of people that you're able to bring in on a consulting basis to help you solve specific problems. So I would want to say those are kind of four things that are very critical for a venture studio. And the fifth one is obviously capital as well. In terms of, I would kind of think about how many ventures. I would go ahead and start with some kind of startup capital to start the venture studio, rather than saying that, oh, hey, I'm just going to start kind of ideas. If you're going the indie hacker approach, definitely, right? Hey, I'm going to test out different ideas and things like that. With that said, if your goal is to kind of to go ahead and launch businesses on a launch scalable businesses on a repeatable manner, I think the last point of capital is also very critical.
Nice. So typically we do like one piece of advice, okay, for people who listen. But now I'm going to make it two pieces of advice for you. So I know there's let's say a SaaS founder out there who's probably going to listen to this. And so what's the let's just say, through your experience and through the things that you're doing right now, what's the one thing that you tell them? That's for the one, like, let's say the first part. The second part is for somebody who's a subject matter expert. So what's like the one, and this is not like what you can do for them, but like one piece of advice that you're seeing in the market that they could leverage or do, or or like sort of benefit from. So one is a SaaS founder, either early stage, just beginning, indie maker, whatever, and the other one is like the subject matter expert. Go for it.
Cool. So I would want to say there's this book called Radical Candor. I would go ahead and recommend anybody that's kind of honest, any professional, be it a founder, be it a startup, non-startup, go ahead and read it, because that book honestly is transformational. It helps you kind of understand how you work with people. So if you ask me for one kind of piece of advice, it would be go ahead and read that book, and that itself will have a lot of different pieces of advice. So yeah, I would say that, honestly, and majority of the things, I think advice-wise, I think we all know what to do because we consistently hear the messages, take care of yourself and all of that, but we don't really follow through on it. So I would just say, pick a couple of things and just follow through on those couple of things that you strongly believe in. So yeah, if it's like, being healthy or meditating or whatever it is, just pick a couple of things and just actually follow through. So yeah, two things: read the Radical Candor book and go ahead and follow through on whatever you choose.
All right, Amit. So typically what we do is, we typically ask, I usually ask this question earlier, but since you mentioned the book, can you tell us, give us a few more? I see a bookshelf behind you. Can you give us a few more names or things that, books that you learned from?
Sure. So the three books that I would probably recommend, the first one is called Radical Candor. It really helps kind of understand how you actually build a team. So I would say that book. The next book is something called The Culture Code. So that again is kind of team focused, is in terms of how you actually build a team and how do you build culture. And the third one is a bit more operations focused, is something called The Leadership Pipeline. Mm-hmm. And I think that really helps scale or understand how you need to scale your organization, because you're able to set expectations for yourself or what you should know or what you should expect at each kind of leadership level and what you should expect from yourself as well. Nice. So I would want to say those three books are things that I would focus on.
Brilliant. And, of course, everybody learns from other people, and or at least we come across all these different people who are doing so many different interesting things. Anybody in particular, or maybe a few people who you either look at or sort of, let's say, follow or track what they're doing and take some inspiration from, maybe.
So I'd want to say that I love speaking with experienced operators. There's really nothing better than that. So I'd want to say three folks that I regularly reach out to for advice and things like that. One is Sidhu Ponnappa. So he worked at Gojek, and was a key part of kind of helping them scale. So I think he's one person I definitely kind of reach out to. The next person is Subbu Pali Nipan. I'm terrible at last name, so
okay, cool.
He heads Amazon Prime here in India, and he's been super helpful, sort of with his time and things like that. So and the third person is Abhishek Lumta. He is someone that scaled a profitable bootstrap business. So those are the three folks that I was going to say that I reach out to. And I think the biggest thing is reach out to or follow operators, because they give you tangible advice to solve problems today, rather than flowery things that are implemented more holistically. So
Got it. All right, Amit, that was nice. Thank you so much for your inputs and the entire venture studio thing. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that we could get into overall, but I really like the overall let's say process and how you put this together. Nice to have you here.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
All right.